What do the cacao tree and the linden tree have in common? You can use the fruits of both to make chocolate. We all know cacao produces the cocoa beans that are used to make the chocolate we all know and love, but you can also make a wild chocolate from the linden tree, commonly called a lime tree in the UK, but nothing to do with the citrus lime. In June and July, I like to harvest the flowers for linden tea, a beautiful relaxing tea, but after the flowers, the nut-like fruits containing seeds form, and that's what we can use to make chocolate. These nut-like fruits are edible and have other uses, but the best and certainly most interesting is to make chocolate. Before we all get too excited though, I must point out that what you can make from the linden tree is not true chocolate, but rather a substitute or alternative that resembles chocolate in some ways. Another way to put it is that the end product is not literally like chocolate, but it is chocolate-like. Interesting fact relating to this, the linden and cacao tree are distantly related, both being in the mallow family, which could help explain how making a chocolate-like product from the linden fruits kind of works. It was apparently a French chemist that originally discovered that linden fruits, when roasted and processed, could be used to create a chocolate substitute. There are many variations on how to do it. I'm going to show you a good way, but probably not the best way in terms of creating the most chocolatey product possible, but it is the most simple and easy way. That does still yield an impressive result with a chocolatey vibe. When I've done it before, I normally just wing it in terms of how much of each ingredient to use, but I will weigh them this time to give you an idea. First of all, harvest the nut-like fruits of the linden tree. I recommend a minimum 70 grams, and that's what I'm going to use to show you the process. Just a small amount to show for demonstration purposes. But beyond 70 grams, it doesn't matter how many you harvest because you can always scale up the amounts of this recipe to make it work. 70 grams does only make a small amount of chocolate, which is fine if you just want to try it, but normally when doing this, I'd use around 300 to 350 grams worth to make about 50 grams worth of powder so I can make a good batch of chocolate. I harvest them when they're green, but when all leftover flower parts are gone, and I only harvest ones that are at least the size of a pea. In the UK, I'd say from mid-July right through August is probably peak time to harvest them to fit this criteria. Once home, I de-stalk them so I just have the fruits and no other bits attached. I then preheat the oven to 180 degrees C and put the fruits on a baking tray with parchment paper, and then put them in the preheated oven to roast the fruits. If it's a fan oven like mine, then roast them for about 40 to 45 minutes. If it's not a fan oven, they might need up to an hour. You want them browned but not burnt and fragrant with a pleasant but very mild aroma. Sometimes the aroma itself can be chocolatey. When done, take them out and let them cool a bit and then grind them up in a spice or coffee grinder. I then put the powder through a sieve to remove larger pieces. If you were doing a larger amount, you could always re-grind these large bits in the next batch. If you've got a very fine sieve, such as a flour sieve like this one, that's much better. So I've just got a nice fine powder to use. If the sieve isn't fine enough, it just makes the end product a bit more gritty in texture. I find that 70 grams of the linden fruits gives me about 10 to 12 grams of roasted and ground powder, but obviously you do get some variation on that. But to keep things simple for this demonstration, I'm just going to use 10 grams of the powder. Once you've got the 10 grams of fine powder, add 4 or 5 grams of caster sugar and mix that up, and then weigh out about 20 grams of coconut oil in a pan. I like coconut oil and such equivalents like butter and shea butter because they are solid at room temperature and even more so in the fridge, so they help solidify the resulting chocolate. But of course when heated, they go watery, so are easy to work with and mix in with the powder that I've created. So I heat up the coconut oil, and once heated and watery, I just add it to the powder and mix it all up into a smooth paste-like liquid. If it's more paste than liquid, that doesn't matter. That might happen if you don't use as much coconut oil, but as long as it's a paste that's damp all the way through, it will still work. I then pour or put the paste into ice cube trays. Obviously you could just use moulds, and then I refrigerate them until it sets. I normally like to leave them a few hours to properly solidify. Pop one out when you want to eat it and keep the rest in the fridge for up to a month. It does have a short shelf life, so don't make too much unless you plan on eating a lot or freezing a lot. But note, sometimes even freezing it can diminish the chocolate-like flavour, so try and make it on demand and enjoy fresh, kept in the fridge over a couple of weeks. There are many variations of what I've just done there, such as using maple syrup or honey as your sweetener instead of pure sugar. If using honey or maple syrup, I'd use about 10 grams worth in the demonstration recipe that I've just gone through, and somewhere between 15 and 20 grams of coconut oil, heating them both in a pan and adding it together to the powder. And then it's just a case of mixing it up into a paste or paste-like liquid and following the same steps that I've just shown you. You can also add a greater ratio of sugar or sugar equivalent to make the chocolate sweeter. You could add a pinch of vanilla bean powder to the mixture. I've never done this, but you could even add nettle seeds. Remember, as I said, that there are better ways ways to do this if you wanted to create the absolute best chocolatey product possible. For example, I have heard that lacto-fermenting the fruits before roasting them does bring out more of the chocolatey flavours. I've also heard that waiting for the fruits to mature more, such as in September, and then actually cracking open the fruits to just collect and use the seeds creates an even better result too. But here I wanted to keep things simple and produce this, which believe me is still pretty amazing.